Also breaking this afternoon, conflicting accounts over a ceasefire in Syria. Vice President Mike Pence announced a deal had been reached after meeting with the Turkish president earlier today.
The Turkish side will pause Operation Peace Spring in order to allow for the withdrawal of YPG forces from the safe zone for 120 hours. Part of our understanding is that with the implementation of the ceasefire, the United States will not impose any further sanctions on Turkey. And once a permanent ceasefire is in effect, the president has agreed to withdraw the economic sanctions that were imposed this last Monday.
That is obviously the U.S. side. As far as Turkey, they're saying not so fast, emphasizing this deal is only temporary. Turkey started its bombardment against the Kurds in northern Syria just last week after President Trump abruptly pulled U.S. troops out of the region. And moments ago, the president called today's news a victory.
Everything we could have ever dreamed of, and we're also going to be able to bring our people back home. This is a situation where everybody is happy, and I'm happy because there's no fighting.
Let's go to the Pentagon to our correspondent there, Barbara Starr. And Barbara, what is your understanding of this supposed agreement, and do you see this as a victory?
Well, I think let's just review some of the facts here in hand. Right now, the Turks are refusing to call it a ceasefire, and they're pretty happy because they get sanctions relief. It's hard to see what they really gave up for all of this. We haven't heard a lot from the SDF yet. The real issue, perhaps, is it continues to be the state of play on the ground. If the SDF pulls back, which is what Turkey wanted in the first place, so they get that, if they pull back, then the question is who really begins to monitor all of this? Who enforces it? Who sees to it that this stays in place? We have no understanding at this point of any kind of international monitoring effort, which is what you would need for something like this so that all parties would feel comfortable and safe that it was really happening. The Turks are much further into Syria than this 20-mile zone that this agreement is talking about. No indication they're pulling back from any of that. You have the Russians on the ground. You have the Syrian regime on the ground. Elements affiliated with ISIS and Al-Qaeda. They're certainly not all party to this. The Russians still very much a key winner by all accounts in this because they have really been able to extend their influence over this entire situation. U.S. troops still very much leaving Syria. No indication they are going back to their bases. And the president, bottom line, talked about still, doing something to protect ISIS fighters from getting out, still being willing to fight ISIS. That's probably the key U.S. national security issue in all of this, to make sure ISIS does not come back. There are no solid measures that have been spelled out yet about how ISIS would still remain under control. Brooke?
Of course. Barbara, thank you very much. And, we've been hearing from members of Congress, both on the left and the right, responding to President Trump's decision and now President Trump's words just moments ago. So let me just play some sound. This is from Republican Senator Mitt Romney, who is now calling for a hearing into the president's actions. Here he was.
Was there no chance for diplomacy? Are we so weak and so inept diplomatically that Turkey forced the hand of the United States of America? Turkey? I believe that it's imperative that public hearings are held to answer these questions, and I hope the Senate is able to conduct those hearings next week. I note in closing that I also hope the ceasefire agreement is honored and that Turkey ends its brutal killing. But I note that lives are already lost and American honor has already been tarnished. We once abandoned a red line. Now we abandon an ally.
Senator Romney there from moments ago. These developments are personal for my next guest. He's an Army veteran who served a year in Iraq. In 2016, he traveled to Syria voluntarily, where he decided to help a Kurdish group fighting ISIS. Porter Goodman is with me now. Porter, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Brooke.
So, Porter, President Trump is now thanking the Kurds and hailing this as this, quote, amazing outcome. Is it an amazing outcome?
It is not. A couple minutes ago, Barbara covered it really well, actually. This is not a victory. This is not any kind of deal. The entire premise of the Turkish invasion was to set up a safe zone 20 miles deep into Syria that would be administered by them. This was unacceptable to the Kurds, which is why they are resisting the invasion. I don't think it will be acceptable to the Assad regime, and I don't think that either will accept this deal. So I don't think that this is any kind of progress. I fear now that having presented this as some kind of deal, once the Kurds and the Assad regime reject it, then the Trump administration will take that as they'll be able to go and say, hey, look, the Kurds didn't take the deal that we made for them, so this is all on them now, and they'll try and wash their hands of it. But this is no kind of deal. This is more like negotiating their surrender. This doesn't answer the fundamental foreign policy issues that led to this disaster in the first place.
Let's talk about you and how, you went and volunteered to fight alongside them. And you were so serious about this, Porter, you didn't even tell your family until you landed back in Iraq. So tell me why you wanted to go volunteer in the first place, because it's my understanding it wasn't initially about fighting ISIS for you.
That's right. What I saw was in northeast Syria. It started with the Kurds, but now all the ethnic groups and communities of northern Syria are really working together on this project. But they started to build their own free, open, democratic society, which really champions the rights of ethnic and religious minorities and really champions women's rights. And in the midst, they were doing this in the midst of a brutal civil war where they're surrounded by ISIS on the south and a hostile Turkish state on the north. I saw a massive information war going on between the Syrian Kurds and the Turkish state, and I wanted to support what the Kurds were doing.
Tell us about your friends, the Kurds. It's my understanding you're still in touch with them, right? What kind of people are they?
These are amazing people. A lot of these fighters, the people of northeast Syria, I mean, they've become really idealistic and really committed to fighting to establish a safe haven for what are really amounts to the full set of Western values that we hold dear in the United States and in the West. So I mean, these are people who were friendly, hospitable, and really are fighting hard against radicalism, extremism, hatred, and that are really working hard to unite the different sectarian groups of northeast Syria and have succeeded.
So just given your personal experience, your personal investment, if you could talk directly to the President of the United States right now about what's happening there, what would you say?
I actually wouldn't really say anything to President Trump. My message would be for the American people. I would want the American people to understand that we're in the middle of an information war that's been going on for years between the Turkish state and the people of northeast Syria. On the one hand, you have the Syrian Kurds who have set up a free and open society where journalists, foreign observers, human rights observers can come and go freely, can validate and investigate what's going on in northeast Syria. On the other side of this information war, you have the Turkish state, which is the world's #1 jailer of journalists and which does not cooperate with human rights observers, whether they be from the United States or the UN or wherever. And they have been producing the majority of the misinformation that's being spread in this information war. And now enter Donald Trump, way on the wrong side of this issue. And anyone who's trying to defend his decisions is finding that there's a huge supply of misinformation out there produced by the Turkish state for them to cling to and try and justify Donald Trump's actions. And they spread this misinformation without understanding the context, where this information came from and what is motivating the Turkish state, without understanding the reputation and the track record of the groups on either side of this information war.
You mentioned Erdogan. He's meeting with Putin in just a couple of days. We'll watch to see what comes of that. Porter Goodman, thank you for your perspective. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Brooke.